right, here we go. Time for another Inkarnate live stream. Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope your week is going well. We've reached hump day. Hey, we made it. We're alive. We've made it halfway through the week. We're almost there. Hold on, buckle in. We're almost there, all right? Hey, today we're doing how to create coastlines. Super excited about this. I know that sometimes it can be very difficult and frustrating to kind of figure out, how do I make my land masses? Do I use plate tectonics? Do I use tinfoil and ink? What do I do to kind of create land masses? So this tutorial, this stream, is going to be focused on how to make land shapes and how to make realistic looking, or not necessarily realistic, but, you know, believable coastlines. So, and that's actually quite an important thing. Believable coastlines, or nice coastlines, kind of go well in contrast with your ocean, and it looks really nice. So smooth coastlines are really important, and so we're going to be covering how to do all that in this stream. You know, making land masses can be confusing, because when you first start making your land mass, you'll notice that it's like, I have a blank map and I don't really know, or you might not really know where to start. So we're going to help with that. We're going to go over a couple methods that you can use to create land masses, whether it's for a world map, a regional map, or even just a battle map. And so we'll cover all that stuff. First, I want to give a real quick shout out to Philip. He made an incredible world map guide that you can find on YouTube. I'll go ahead and drop that link into the chat. Go check this out. Incredible video done by Philip, and it's kind of suits to what we're doing. So maybe after you watch this stream, go check that video out. It's a great little time lapse. It's about 20 minutes long or so, and it's going to go over basically their process and how they make world maps. So go check that out. I also want to mention that Cheryl will be modding today. That's SL Mumby. You have any questions, feel free to ask them. Don't be afraid, just ask, okay? All right, let's jump right in. Okay, so there are a couple methods in which I use to make land masses. And over time, as you develop and train your eye to create land masses, you won't have to rely on a lot of these techniques. It's because you will train and develop your eye over time to make them. So the more maps you make, the more better that you'll get at it, of course, right? So the first technique that I like to use, which I see in a lot of the way that other people does it, and Philip did it as well, and that is just to do kind of this globular technique, and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to use the edgy brush of the add mode of the mask tool. Just press that M key. Add mode is going to be an A. Just click that, and then you're going to go over to your edges and bring down the edges to maybe 3. Let's just add real quick and just see how it looks first. So I'll apply it to the canvas. Looks a little too small. What we want is the edges to be bumpy enough to kind of create some interesting looking alcoves and pieces that jut out to work with. So let's just apply this here and just see how well the edges look. Yeah, that looks fine. That you can see now that these edges look nice, so you can work with that as you go. I'm going to undo that. So the first step, once you've figured out what you want for your edges and your shape, is now you can apply that to the canvas. And what you do is you just make a glob first. Don't worry about making any kind of serious land mass shape. Just think of this as like a Pangea technique. You'll create a giant blob, and then you're going to go around each edge, and you're going to start breaking things up and turn it into a series of larger continents or separate continents. So we'll start with this blob first and stick with some random stuff popping out, not just a square shape. So make one go out like this. So now you have this blob shape. Now once you have the blob down, now you can go in and do a couple passes. So by passes, I mean you're going to go around each one of the shorelines. Turn off my filter there. We're going to go over around each of the shores, going around with a couple passes using the subtract mode of the mask tool. So you press that M key, you go to subtract, and it's already set to 30. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit more than that. I'd say about 20, I'm going to go with 20. And from here, you're going to break up this large glob into smaller ones. Let's say that you want 3 continents, okay, 3 larger continents. Then what we can do is we can go in and just start making some weird S shapes like a river, meandering like a river. Start that first. So start doing that. And then I'll do another one. Let's put one right here. Let's create like maybe a shape like this. Now I have my 3 land masses. Now they're all really close together, so that's okay. We can push those out a little bit by deleting some stuff in front. So I'm going to go in, keep my brush size, and I'll just start deleting like this. Just go kind of back and forth and kind of just break it up on each edge. And you'll also create some islands. It's okay if you don't get everything. That's fine if you leave a couple behind, because boom, there's your little islands that you want. And now this is always subject to change. It'll take several passes. So this is kind of the first pass, and we'll keep going over. And I like to go into these diagonals, go in this diagonal, see this diagonal shape I'm making. That diagonal, if you keep doing that, you get some really interesting shapes. So I'm going to undo that. So do this diagonal, and I usually go, I think it's around a 45-degree angle. I can't remember which one it is, which angle it was. But if you go at this diagonal like this, you get some really interesting shapes. When you go like this, it kind of creates this interesting landscape. Just wait for it to load. There you go. And you get the shape. And then you can say, well, I don't like this. This is a little too close. You wouldn't really expect that, but you can leave some of it and keep an island. And then just keep doing that diagonal technique that I've been doing. So go like this, only I'm going to do it on this side. A couple long strokes, a couple short ones. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be trying to remove enough to create, because what you want is you want some land. Now, if your world map doesn't have much ocean, then it's okay to not delete too much. But if you want more ocean, which is true for our own planet, or a watery world we'll call the blue planet, if you want to stick with reality, then yeah, try to maybe delete as much as you can and try to more closely define the land masses. Maybe you don't like the shape and you want to get rid of some. Let's go ahead and go up a couple sizes and just delete this entire kind of shape right here, and create a little bit more space between the land masses and the water. So that way, we'll give it a second to load. Okay. Now how much detail you want, like if let's say that you want to make a bay, there's all kinds of interesting formations when it comes to land masses and geography, and as well bodies of water. You have inlets, seas, bays, the whole list goes on. There's geographical formations like an isthmus, a jetty, a horn, all those kind of geographical shapes. So I like to put in a couple horns, I like to put in a couple bays, and I like to create a sea, and I like to create oceans, because there is a difference between a sea and an ocean. Like this center part right here would be more of a sea. Right here, this is more of a sea. Well, this would be more of an ocean out here without other land masses around it. So you have a sea and you have an ocean. A sea isn't necessarily landlocked because it connects to usually to a larger body of water like an ocean, but it's nice to add a sea here and there and a couple inlets and bays. Like right here, you have a large bay right here, or maybe it's an inlet. You have a large bay here. We can delete that island. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And now what's nice about the large glob is that you're starting with a large landmass and then breaking it into several smaller ones, just like with normal plate tectonics. And with the planet, you have a Pangea, a supercontinent, and then you're breaking it off. Now, one thing as you go is that you want to make sure that your landmasses somewhat match each other across aside from each other. So you'll notice this edge right here, and you see this edge right here. Now, with plate tectonics, you would expect some of this right side to kind of match the left side a little bit. So we have this horn right here. It goes like that, and we want to delete these islands right here. You're going to want to at least mimic a little bit of the adjacent side or the opposite side, because that would make it more clear that these were once a larger landmass piece, because they have parts that complement each other. So there's a large horn right here. You can see this large horn in the center. We might want to go in and kind of create a little bit of an edge right here. so that way it kind of looks like it was there. Okay, so that's one thing you want to do, is that once you've kind of created the basic shapes, you're going to want to go in now and make sure that the land kind of matches, kind of comes together as you would kind of expect when a large landmass through plate tectonics breaks apart, right? And then also those land masses will come together over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years will come together, and there's a process of subduction where plates, two continents or plates might hit each other, and that causes mountain ranges to form. Now, I don't want to go too much into the science, into plate tectonics, because it's really easy to get discouraged when you start going into the realm of lots and lots of hyper-realism, because a map is a representation of reality, and the more realism that you want to add, that means the more work, and it's going to be a lot harder, and also it might kill your buzz. So it's kind of difficult sometimes. Don't let hyper-realism destroy the experience for you. That doesn't mean that you can't use realism. My goal generally in most maps is to start first with utility. That means make it kind of realistic a little bit, just realistic enough, and then apply the fantasy element. Some crazy coastlines, some floating islands, stuff like that. So this is that first method. It's the large globular piece. Again, think of it as Pangea with pieces that break apart from a main continent, or think of it as a sculptor with, you have a large piece of stone and you're sculpting away to create the landmass shape that you want. So that first step is a glob, a large shape. Go in, start breaking it up, and do several passes to create the horns, the inlets, the bays, and the islands that you're looking for. Now, when you're making islands, this one's not complicated. You want to make additional islands, just go with the subtract mode. We'll bring down the edginess just a little bit. Small islands are easy to make. All you have to do is just do a little bit of the squiggly around the edge. So this is how you create a, what I would call an archipelago. So you can go in like this and just do a couple squirglies like this. And boom, you've got yourself an archipelago. And it's as simple as that. Now get rid of now if you do take your circle brush and just kind of remove anything that looks a little too thin. These little pieces right here, you want to remove those. Those are going to look weird, so you don't want that. But you can save that for last, because if you did this from the start, you might get tired and bored of it. So I like to first just get the general shapes and put everything together. And then from there, you can go in with your details and get rid of all the little inconsistencies in the line work of your landmass, because that's really frustrating. See right here, you can see there's some landmass there, there's some there, some right here that I missed. So you just get rid of those. All right, so that's step one. That's step one. That's the first method when you're going to make it. So carve things out, go at a diagonal, and it doesn't have to be at that same diagonal. It can do it at any angle, but for me, diagonals work really, really well when you're trying to carve out some of these shapes, to give it more realism, to make it look more realistic. That is what I like to do. Now there are a couple other methods of doing land masses. If you don't know, right below the objects on the right panel, you'll notice there's a world generator. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see that. If you have all these things selected, layers, scenes, objects, you'll notice you have to scroll down to get to it. So just close all the windows except for the world generator. For me, I like to go with around 70. Now, the objective of the world generator isn't to generate your world right off the bat for you and then it's done. No. The world generator is used to actually give you something to work with first, and then you can go in with that same technique of going in and just with diagonals and break things up. So we'll go with generate new world. I'm going at 70% ocean and 60% land. That's generally where I go with a world or regional map. And I'm going to generate it. And now there's clear all stamps and fill layers with default textures. I generally like to turn off the clear all stamps if there's any stamps on the map, so that way they won't get removed. So I'm going to select generate world. I'm going to do it once first. Now it may take a couple clicks. You may not get what you want right off the bat. So just give it a moment to load. And so you have this kind of shape right here. Now, if this isn't what you're looking for, you don't feel you can work with this, just hit it again. Hit generate and wait for some landmass that gives you some inspiration. Like, oh, I like this. I can work with this. So we're going to wait. I kind of like this. This is nice. Now, at first, you're going to say, well, this doesn't make a world map. This is more of a regional map. That's not a problem. You go back in, grab the subtract button, and just remove any land masses that are on the edge where this is, and then you can go in and start reshaping. Oopsie, I used the wrong brush. Let's go with the edgy brush instead. Okay, here we go. 1 second, a little slow to load. Just go in here and just kind of delete this stuff right here. And then from there, you can kind of add in more landmass, or you can put in more. It's up to you. Sometimes if you feel like it's not enough, like there's too much ocean, then just go with a smaller amount of ocean, like 58. Let's go down to 50. And so half of the map will be ocean, and that might make it easier for you to want to break away the edges because there'll be more land in the center. So let's go with 50%. We'll let it generate, and then I'll go around the edges real quick. There we go. I'm gonna go around my edge like this, just kind of remove them like you're just creating a frame. Don't worry about those edges. We'll go in and fix that later. So now that you have that, you can go in and subtract because you want to remove in these strange lines. Just one moment, we'll do this. Again, don't forget that edgy going in with the diagonals like this to kind of give things some shapes. And you can add too as well. If it's not enough, you can go in and add more. Just give it a moment. All right. Oops, there we go. Let's go ahead and load this. Get this out. Just want to get these straight lines. And then we'll go back in with the add mode and just throw in a couple blobs to keep things going. So I'll put a blob over here. And I'll put a blob connected to this one right here. That's fine. There we go. Now I can go back with my subtract mode and start making some interesting shapes. And I can even separate this if I want to make this a separate island. Make that a separate island. If I want, I can create a bay with a large strait that goes into this inlet here, or make it a separate island by just cutting it off like that. And then you have a separate island. You want more islands? That's fine. Go ahead and break it off. Don't forget those diagonals. There you go. So generate new world. The whole world generator is one way to do it. So that way you just add and delete whatever you like and don't like to it. If you're making a world map, you want it to be a regional map, you don't have to delete the edges. So that's a second method. I don't really use this method very often because I've been training my eye to try to learn how to create interesting land masses without these techniques. But for people who are just learning, these are the kind of tools that will help to develop that eye to create landmass. And I'm not a landmass genius. These are just the landmasses techniques that I've kind of developed that have helped me over time to develop that eye. And I want you to develop that eye as well, because landmasses are incredibly frustrating to start with, so you don't know where to go. So I totally understand. Now there is another method I want to show real quick, and then we'll go also, we'll start making some more details in our coastline. So I'm going to subtract everything from here. I'll show you one other technique. I haven't used this one in a while, but it does work for me. And that is if you go into your catalog and you go into Parchment World, there should be a texture called a stain. I'm just going to turn that off. Let me go to Parchment World. There should be stains. Let me see. Where is it? Swamp. There it is. Stains. Okay, and I like to go ahead and make some changes first with the stain texture. And what I'm doing is I'm using a texture and it's negative and positive, using negative and positive artifacts within the texture to create land masses. So I'll show you how this works real quick. I'm going to go over like this whole thing, and I'm going to want to also make sure it's set to BG. I'm going to go to filters. I'm going to change the brightness so it's real dark. And I'm also going to probably do some rotation. So I'm going to increase the size. You can kind of see it on the map already, right there. And I'm also going to rotate it. And I'm going to press enter a couple times because it's an alpha. Now already you're going to see, press it a couple times, and you'll notice that there already is some really weird shapes already built. Now you're going to see repetition in the shape, but that doesn't mean that you have to follow the same lines in it. So I'll go over real quick with the add mode, and I'm going to use that edgy brush. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to pick some line work that I want to follow, and you don't have to follow it exactly. So I'll go in like this. Oopsie, set to subtract. Let me go in with the add mode. Apologies there. There we go. And I'm going to go in like this and just kind of pick some shapes. Let's go with a larger brush. That is quite small. 30, there we go. We'll go in like there. Hey, welcome. Fear 2 Dungeon. I'm glad that you are here. Welcome, first time chatter. Love it. Okay, so let's go ahead and follow some of the artifacts in this. And it's just, again, to give you an idea. You don't have to follow it perfectly, just to give you a general idea. So we'll wait for that to load for the mask effects, and then you're just going to fill in the shape. Now, you're not going to love it right away, of course. You'll have to make some changes, but you're using the negative space, using the line work and the artifacts. This might be easier for some people than throwing down a giant glob, because you still don't know what shapes to make. So if that technique of doing diagonals doesn't work for you, it's not going to help, then this is another technique, using textures and then using the negative or the artifacts to fill it in. So you'll do that with all of them. So you want to make another island right here like this. And again, factor in your other shape. So you notice that there's this piece right here where my mouse is, where I'm filling in this land. You'll notice that there is kind of a bay right across from there, or an kind of a inlet right here that kind of fits well with this shape right there. Okay, so factor that in when you're putting in your land masses, and just go ahead and just put in another one too, as much as you want. Another one right here. So just using that negative space. Punch in maybe a small island, maybe put one here. Just using that line work. Now, of course, you're going to fill everything in. Fill in the shapes that you made, and then from there, you'll just do the same technique that you've been doing in the last couple. Just take the subtract mode of the mask tool and go in a diagonal or whatever direction you want, and just start breaking up those edges and start creating some interesting shapes, horns, inlets, outlets, whatever you want to make it to be. It's an isthmus, whatever you want. So kind of factor that in when you do that technique. So those are the 3 techniques that I use. 1, the Pangea or the sculptor technique. 2, you just use that world generator feature. Just set it to whatever, how much percentage of ocean you want, and then apply that, and of course start dealing with that. Or this one, using a texture that has artifacts that you can kind of outline, and that way you don't have to figure out the shapes in your head. You have a general idea already on the map for you to kind of work with. So once you've filled everything in, I'm just going to quickly fill everything in. You can delete that texture on the BG, because this is made with the add mode of the mask tool. Okay, so I'll fill in this landmass real quick. And remember, you're never going to be happy with your first pass, with your first attempt. Okay, you'll have to go in and finesse your edges and change things around. So just kind of factor that in. So I'll do this. I'm going to fill this all in real quick. One moment. There we go. And then I'll go over with the brush tool like we just did. Brush tool. Rectangle shape. Make sure it's set to BG, of course. You've got this bluish texture. Press enter, and there you go. Now that's all gone, and you can start working on doing more with the shapes. Whether you feel like this is a weird shape, you don't like this horn, you want to get rid of this inlet here. So all the different shapes. So there's a lot of different techniques, and of course, these are not the only ways. These are just the 3 ones that I've used over time that have really helped me to develop my eye for land shapes. And of course, you'll want to do either come up with your own technique or use one of these. What the beautiful thing about Inkarnate is, like, there's 10 different ways to do things. There's not one way, and that's beautiful because everybody learns and does things differently. And there's not one right way. I mean, certainly there's some wrong ways, but there's not really an official one right way to do something. That's the beauty of Inkarnate. So those are the 3 techniques that I've shared with you, and we want to maybe go into more detail about coastlines, about mask effects that you want to use, especially with world maps, and then we can go into another step, which is how to make battle maps, how to make geography. Let's see, if you're making a coastal scene or a lake scene, how is it that you're going to make those coastlines look decent? So first, let's just work with this map since we're already here. We'll go ahead and go work with this. So again, whenever you've made the main shapes, you go in with the subtract mode of the mask tool and always go in with a relatively small brush. Now you don't want to make it too small to where there are little tiny pieces of landmass floating around everywhere to the point where it just takes you too long to delete everything. So let me just show you that real quick. See what happens when I use a really small brush? Sometimes you kind of create, well, actually this brush size is nice, but if it's too small, here, I'll go to the smallest size and show you what I mean. If you go with a small brush, actually with an edgy brush, it works okay. Well, never mind, I'm full of it. I'm full of shit, don't listen to me. Don't listen to me, I'm full of shit. Okay, so go in with that smaller brush size. It's whatever size you want. I'm at 1, but when you have an edgy brush, it's not going to be quite as small as if I use a circle brush. So if I use 1 with a circle brush, you kind of notice that it's not quite as effective, and it creates all these little tiny little wiry land masses, and we don't really want that unless you're trying to make, like, let's say a glacier or Arctic broken ice. That might work for you. So it's quite different when you use a circle brush than when you use an edgy brush. So we're going to stick with that edgy brush because that works really well for me. And I'll make a couple things so that you can figure out how it was. One, we can make a bay. And if you want to know what a bay is just basically like an inlet where there's enough land kind of almost ringing it. So you have like this right here is a bay. I'll show you an example. So this right here can be a bay. And you can create a bay with an isthmus if you want. An isthmus is a long piece of land that's very thin, and it can connect or not connect. I think it does connect. I'll have to double check. But you can put like a horn or an isthmus that goes out like this. And of course you'll want to do like adding. And I'll go with 1. And you can create like a little horn that comes out here like this. And we can delete that. And so now you have like maybe a small isthmus or even a jetty. A jetty is man-made, by the way. An isthmus is not made by men. It's by human beings. It's made naturally, but a jetty is man-made. So if you want, this could be a jetty, and I think if it was an isthmus, it would actually connect. But this right here would be your bay, and it's not hard to make. Generally what I do is I just do like a kind of a bowl shape or a bottle shape. So one sec, I'll show you how I go about doing that. So first you want to have where it goes inward. So we'll go with subtract, sorry about that. And you're gonna go inward first, like this, and then you can go in and kind of create like a bowl or whatever shape you want. Bays aren't perfectly circular, so you can go in like this and kind of create a bay. And if you want, you can have a lot of land masses. You can have a lot of land masses that are propping out, or you can create like a little island like this. So this broke off, and so you have an island there. You can break it all off if you want. You can delete this, and you still have a bay. If you're not satisfied with that, connect this again. So if you want some islands, again, you see the small little tiny little pieces of landmass right here, so small that it doesn't even see the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, just be mindful about your brush strokes and just go in your final pass, which is at the very end after you finish the map, just to make sure. And you know, setting a certain mask effect will help you to point out any kind of weird spots on the map. So we'll do mask effects real quick. Now just know that with mask effects, it's a global effect. And I know that some people have asked about like, well, wait a minute, I want my shoreline over here to be more yellowish, like a beachhead, while you say like this part of the coastline is a cliff. Okay, so now if you are working with the mask effects, again, it's global. You will not be able to isolate the different coastlines, the mask effects. Unfortunately, that's not something that we have yet. That's super cool, and I like that idea, but we don't have that. So if I apply a mask effect, it's going to affect every single thing, every single landmass. So I'm going to first just change my outline to black real quick, and this is going to help just a little bit because I want to show that what you want for your land masses to do is to pop out. Now you notice right away that I've used contrast to make the land masses pop out. You have a white outer shadow against a dark black line. That's your contrast. That's helpful. So contrast helps to make your landmass pop out. So see what happens when I remove my stroke. You'll notice that the landmasses don't pop out quite as much because you don't have that line work to help it pop out. So I'll bring that stroke back. And you'll notice that the ocean or the landmasses pop out with that line work. Now you can change the line work of the stroke to whatever you want. You can change it, so if you want it to be black, it's there, but if you want, you can make it white to show the very edge of, to show like the water reaching up against the edge. And I generally like to drop the opacity when I do that. I don't want it perfectly white because it's a hard white line, and I want it to mesh better or connect or work better with the white outer shadow that I have. So white also works. Because it's all the same color, it's all white all the way around, even against this white outer shadow, it still pops out because you have this dark blue or bluish color against that white, and so it still pops out. Now when it comes to inner shadows, there are a couple ways to go about it, and it depends on how you paint. If you're thinking about making a world map and there's different biomes, you might not want to consider using your mask effects, especially if you want different coastlines. Oh, how do you regulate opacity? Oh, absolutely. If you go right here, you'll see the mask tool. That's that M key, stroke color, and then the opacity slider is right there where that white bar is. You see the white, that's the opacity slider. You'll see the opacity change as I go up and down, okay? So yeah, absolutely, because you know, a flat white line might not look quite as nice. I mean, it's okay to have it, like here, I'll show you. Here's that bright white line. Again, super bright. It's gonna make it pop out, but me personally, I actually like to bring it down a little bit, and then we can deal with inner shadow, because you notice that the inner shadow is dark. That also is helping create contrast. So you have this white line and you have these dark inner shadows. That's also helping with the white stroke color. Now, if you want, you can change things around too. But remember, contrast is how you make things pop out. So if you want your land masses to really, really resonate, to pop out and be separate from your oceans, you're going to be using contrast, light against dark. All right. So if you're going to go with a dark, outer shadow, then you might want to consider changing the inner shadow to being lighter. So let's say that I wanted to change the outer shadow to something different. One thing is you can change the color. It doesn't have to be white. What we're trying to represent with that outer shadow is shallower water, right? As the ocean gets closer to your coastline, the shallower the water gets, unless there's some large cliff, right? But for the most part, you're going to show shallower water by using a lighter color to represent that. So now conversely, if you want to show deeper water, you'd want to use a darker texture. And I usually like to use that darker texture away from the edges, just like you're doing the game Operation. Don't paint against your edges here with a dark texture, because then it will make it look like there is dark or deep water right against the shore, and that might not work with your brush. Now, if you're not satisfied with white and you're trying to have a different effect, you can change the color as well. So we have this dark blue or semi-dark blue color already, so we can apply a bluish color to, oopsie, that's the stroke, my mistake. I meant to do outer shadow. Hey, do as I say, but not as I do. One sec, I'll fix that. All right, let's go to outer shadow. Real quick, I'm gonna go, oopsie, I just turned it off. Wasn't that nice? So I'll click that outer shadow, and it's already set to a bluish color already, actually, I've noticed. That's cool. Sweet, but we'll go all the way up. And let's change it to this blue, maybe. That might be a little too much. Let's try this one. And of course, well, actually, I like that lighter blue better. We'll go with that. Of course, you'll want to change the opacity once you've done that. So again, there's that opacity slider bar. I bring down the opacity quite a bit. We'll bring it down even more. Let's take a step back. And so you can kind of create, it almost has like a tropical kind of feel to it, right? Now, if you're doing, again, multiple different biomes, that's where things might get tough. You might want to stick with a very basic, stroke and a very basic outer shadow, but don't worry about an inner shadow, because you might want to paint your rock bars, sandbars, your beachheads, your cliffs. You might not have sand there, so it might not work to have a different color for your outer shadow and your inner shadow, like a yellow inner shadow to make a shoreline. Might not work well, because why do you have a yellow inner shadow coastline in the Arctic, in a snowy region? Why do you have that in whatever different regions? Doesn't make any sense, right? So you'll have to factor that in. Let me go back, and I like to just usually stick with white because it works with almost every single color that you use, unless you're going with a different style. There are various ways that you can do your mask effects when it comes to coastlines. I'm going to bring the blur down and bring the opacity down quite a bit. There we go. All right. All right, there we go. That works for me. And I'm sticking with a basic, darker inner shadow. I'm going to show real quick what I mean by if you added like a yellow one for the inner shadow. You know, your entire coastline might not be beachhead. And so going with yellow might not work in every case. So I'll go out and you can kind of see it creates a kind of a yellowish kind of color, and yellow and blue go well together. So you'll see that yellow works okay. But again, let's say that maybe this island or part of this up here is an Arctic or snowy. That's clearly not going to work, right? So it actually works best, in my opinion, if you kind of stick with that darker color, and from there you can kind of work with it. So I'll go ahead and bring that back down. There we go. Okay, for now from here, when it comes to the different styles of biomes, so we're going to shift into painting a little bit with your coastlines. So if you're not focusing on having all the coastline be the same because of different biomes, desert, beachheads, whatever, then you can turn your inner stroke or your inner shadows off if you'd like, and then you'll have to go by hand. Now it does make it a little bit more flat because it kind of removes like a bevel. So if I go back, you'll see that the shadow almost kind of creates a bevel effect. And again, it works in contrast with that white shadow or that white stroke. So again, factor in that contrast with whatever your stroke line color is going to be and your inner shadow. Now I'm going to keep it because it's just dark and I can add in different colors as I wish. But first, let's go over a couple things. One, how do we make just a regular beach? How do I make a regular beach coastline? Now I'm in the fantasy world style. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pick a color that I want to work as the beach. I'm going to pick the brush I want. I don't generally prefer to use the edgy brush when doing this, though you can. I prefer to use a soft brush circle shape, and I bring the opacity down. And I bring the size down a little bit. Now I'm going to apply it to the canvas real quick to see how it interacts with this dark shadow, with the inner shadow. If it clashes too much, then I might want to consider turning it off. So I'll apply it first. Let's go with 40, bring it up, and I'm going to go along this edge right here. And actually, I think I might go up even more. Let's go up with 60, 70. Go up, there we go. Okay, and then we can kind of put in this edge. Just go along the edge like this. Now, if you want like a larger beachhead, you can go further in. Go further in. Okay, like that. Now, once you've done that first pass, go in for another pass. Let's go in with 100, and I'll bring it in right here. And I do think that the stroke, the inner shadow does actually kind of get in the way. So I might remove it. How zoomed out is this supposed to be? We didn't actually establish scale because I'm not going to make an actual map. But if you want to help with scale, then I immediately recommend that you bring up your grid. And I use the square grid. I don't use the isometric grid. And you can immediately set a scale. So it's up to you. Now, a map is a representation of reality, so you don't have to make it perfectly to scale if you don't want to. It makes a little more sense to have things perfectly to scale for maybe like a battle map or something. But with your world map, you don't have to. But it does help. So putting up your grid, deciding how much square miles a grid is, and then with that you can assign it. So if you want to say that each square grid is maybe 60 square miles, you could go with that. That's up to you. I mean, we can establish that. So if that's the truth, then this is, roughly around 200, 300 miles of beachhead right here. Okay, so you can establish right away. This is just the basic grid right here. I like to bring it down. When I am using the grid, I like to bring it down to -5. And I like to bring the opacity down quite a bit because it kind of gets in the way. But now that you have a grid, you can use that to decide what you want each measure or increment. Now, since I'm not making the map, I'm just making the landmass, I'm not focusing too much on that. Oh yeah, you can go with hexagonal if you want, or isometric, whichever one works best for you. I like to use this grid, but you know what? This absolutely works too. If you'd like, each grid could equal 120, could be 60 square miles, whatever it is, whatever you want it to be, that's up to you. Again, I'm not putting a lot of emphasis on scale because we're not going to be making mountain ranges. We're not going to be making POIs. The only thing I'm focusing on in this video is just how to make coastlines, and that includes land masses. There is a tutorial on scale. I think it's on YouTube. If it's not, then we can put another one because scale is confusing and can be kind of difficult. So I don't mind touching base on scale, because scale is really helpful, especially when you want to be very specific about measurements of distances between two locations. You say you have a campaign and you want it to be a 4-day walk or hike to the next location so that you have some random encounters or not random encounters. So yeah, scale absolutely helps. If you have more questions about scale, feel free to ask. We'll throw that in and we'll maybe compile those questions and address them in another stream. Okay, so again, land masses. I'm going to delete or get rid of this outer shadow. Or inner shadow. I don't really care for it. I'm going to go ahead and wait for it to turn off. And you'll notice, I'm going to do another beach so you can kind of see the technique again. But I like to bring the opacity down and do your first pass. Okay, so once you go on, do one pass. I'm going to go with a bigger size too. Undo that, go along the line here. And it's your first pass at a lower opacity. Okay, and all you're doing is just creating that first pass, that hint of color along the edge. Now, once you've done that, you can go up the opacity and bring down the size, and just along the edge, you can put in that darker or a little bit more color along that edge, like this, like that. We'll go in. So now you have this nice little edge here. And if you want, you can do more blending to make this blend in with this edge. And the way that I go about doing that is pretty simple. I bring down the size and I bring down the opacity and I single click. So I'm just going to go one single click here, another one here, just single click to create some transition along this edge. There we go. I'll just wait for it to load. And you'll see that there's already some transition going on there right there. Let me turn off the grid. Again, the grid is distracting, but you can see the single clicks and there's this nice edge right here. So you have this nice kind of sandy beachhead right there. So that's how I go about doing my beachheads and my coastlines with sand. There's all different ways to go about doing it. If you want to make a straight up cliffside, then you don't need to even put any kind of shore at all, right? You can just put down your cliff stamps along the ledge here and then just apply a dark maybe a dark texture to go over the stamps. But that's how I go about doing my beaches. And you don't have to put beaches everywhere. That's, you know, there's not going to be beach around every single edge. What I like to do is just pick some spots where I want it to be. So I could say, well, I want this to be shore. I want this to be a beach right here, going all the way like this. And I'll put in some more right here maybe. I'll put one along this ledge. Maybe this entire island will have lining with. So remember, again, that first pass. Let's go in here. We'll put a beach all along here like this as well. Okay, then from there you go in with that larger setting, of course, bring down the size, and then you just go along the edge. Oopsie, it's a little bit too much. I'll go ahead and zoom in too, because when it comes to this fine detail, you want to go in a little bit closer. And I'll bring down the size. Ah, there we go. I'm going to go along this ledge like this. And again, this is where your beach heads are at. So we'll go along this edge here. You get this nice beach effect. You're just using the same color twice with two passes, the same texture twice. One larger one and then a second one. And if it's not enough, again, just go in with a larger, with a higher opacity. So that way it really, really pops out. Really, really pops out. You really have those nice shorelines. Okay. All right. Yeah, see? So now you have some landmass there. Now, if you want, you can go about and make things a bit differently. Let's see here. I wanted to check. Is there any questions about this? Are there any other formations that you, or any other coastal paintings that you want to have me address? I think for now, this is it for the world maps, because there's not a whole lot of painting along shorelines outside of just putting in the sand. There are rock bars and stuff, but it's really hard to obviously see a rock bar at the scale so far down. I mean, obviously these beaches are super huge, you know, hundreds of miles long. So now if you want to follow scale, you can. If you don't, it's okay. Don't let realism kill the experience for you, because when I first started, I would always fret over the realism of my map, and that kind of killed the experience for me, because I got so focused on that I was never satisfied with anything I came up with. So, you know, I got discouraged. You know, being too hyper focused on realism broke the experience for me personally. That doesn't mean that you can't do that. If you want to focus on hyper realism, that's totally up to you. But just kind of remember that a map is a representation of reality. It's not a satellite image. it's a representation. So don't, if I were you, I wouldn't focus too much on hyperrealism, so that way you can actually get maps done. Okay, so that is how I go about shorelines. Now there's some other things that we want to touch base on as well. We wanted to do battle maps and how to do that. So let's go back, we'll leave this and we'll go into battle maps, and I'll show you how I go about doing battle maps with it. So let's go create new map. I'm going to go with Fantasy Battle Maps 2.0, and just so you know, this, well, the way that I'm going to do my coastline in battle maps is going to be the same in all the battle map styles. So if I was using watercolors, I would do the same thing. It'd be this exact same thing. When it comes to world maps, I'd be doing the same technique with watercolor cities. Okay, once you get the basics, it helps. So first we're going to fill up the entire screen with land. That's what I like to do first when I am making a battle map that has water involved. So I have my land first. That's what the add mode of the mask tool. Generally, the add mode of the mask tool is what you use to make land, okay? The subtract mode is what you would generally use to make water. Is this the only thing you can do with the FG and the BG layers? No, of course not. There's tons of things you can do with them. But for the basics, for those of you just starting, this is what the primary function of the mask tool is for, is creating land masses with the FG or the add mode of the mask tool, and creating water sources with the BG or the subtract mode of the mask tool. Remember, anything made with the add mode is going to be the FG. Anything made with the subtract mode is going to be the BG, okay? So, and when you first open a map, the default canvas is going to be the BG. Okay, so just factor that in. So if you're like, well, wait a minute, why isn't this texture working? Well, it's probably because you're set to FG and you have a BG layer. Or you're like, why isn't the Why isn't this painting on my land? Well, it might be set to the BG layer. So again, FG, press that 1 key, BG, press that 2 key. If you don't know about shortcut keys, don't forget you can always press the K key and check out all these nice shortcut keys here. Oh, yes. How do I make this work? What is the combination to make this work? Oh, very frustrating. So look up those shortcut keys to help you to figure out what you're doing. Now with Battlemaps, again, I like to fill the entire screen with the FG layer. So that's land. And then from there, I can start carving out what I want. So if I'm making let's say that I'm making a coastal scene where there's maybe a windmill on a horn out against a bay area, then I can go ahead and do that. So I can go in and drop my size down, and I want to create a bay. That same concept. Let's just cut the screen a little bit. Oopsie, with the BG layer, my mistake. There we go. Oopsie, I just painted it. That's not what I want. I want the mask tool. What am I doing? Go with that subtract. And I'm just going to go ahead and remove much of this side first. So I'm just removing it because this is where my ocean is going to be. And then from there, well, let's just go at an angle. So that way, because it's a little bit nicer to have some angles in it. There we go. And I'm going to create, again, a horn. So I'll start with creating a horn shape. Let's go in, make it a little bit smaller here. Here's that horn. Like this. Looks like a hump. It's a nice hump. This is a nice horny hump, whatever this is going on here. You didn't see that coming, did you? Oh, you didn't see that coming. I tricked you. Okay, so we'll go in here. Take out my sweatshirt. It's getting a little toasty in here. Whoo, getting warm. Must be you guys. All your fault. Why are you warming me up like this? Looks like a nip or something. I don't know. I might have to change this shape. This looks a little too inappropriate. This is not child-friendly geography at all. This is adult geography here. Welcome to Adult Geography 101 with me tea. Okay, so we'll go in here. I'm going to fix this so it doesn't look so much like something inappropriate. There we go. We'll give it some curve to it. There we go. You know, that didn't help my cause. That didn't help my cause at all. Dang it. Oh, man. Oh, land shapes. Yeah, baby. Well, hey, I'm 3 years old, so it works for me. Of course, you're going to want to change your background color, of course. What is this, an ocean made of mud? Kind of cruddy. I'm not digging that. So we'll go in and we'll pick an ocean texture that might work well. Let's go with this one. And we'll just go across the entire screen. I was gonna say, yes, of course you were, King Clown. My liege, of course. Of course you were. I was gonna say, of course you were. Oh, I love these faces. Awesome. Okay, so we have some landmass, and we want to put down some stuff first. So now when it's a bit different when you're working with a battle map than it is when you're working with a world map. You're going to have to factor in scale. So what I like to do after I've kind of made the general shape is to put down a stamp to establish my scale, and then from there I can continue working on my landmass. So you can put down a tree, you can put down a composite building, you can put down a body, you can put down a pan, you could put down a water jug. I mean, whatever it is you want to put down, just rando it, you know. Just put some wieners right here. There's some sausages right here. Just throw them down. That's the first stamp that's going to work for scale, okay? Whatever it is that you want. All right, so well, what I'll do is I'll probably put down a tree, and that will give me some good idea for scale, right? And I think I mentioned a windmill, so let me look up composites or something real quick. And this all depends on whether you want to see the interior or not. Oh, there's a small castle here. Ships. Ooh, okay. Let me look here. Oh, here we go. We can use this. I don't want to do an interior. I'm going to do an exterior. I'll wait for this stamp to load. I'm going to place it down. Again, your first stamp is what you're going to use for scale, and we're going to put it on the this fun, interesting shaped landmass here that I have created unwittingly. Okay, just give it a second. Okay, come on now, you can do it. You can do it. Come on, loading images. Loading, loading. I am loading. Do you have time? I have time. What the heck is going on here? I might have to save it real quick and refresh the page. If stuff like this happens, just save it and then just refresh the page. Sometimes the images are loading. You might have to clear your internet cache. Sometimes this stuff happens. Let me just save this real quick. We're going to call it not so good landmass. Not so good landmass. I mean, maybe it's good. I don't know. That's purely interpretive, I guess. Depends on the function of the landmass. All right. We'll let that save. Refresh the page. Saving. Da 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 da. We got all the time in the world. Saving is exciting. Yeah. Eventually it'll start actually doing the saving, I think. Yeah, we'll save, we'll refresh, we'll go back. And again, you're going to want to use the same kind of painting, the same kind of techniques we used before. But first, again, we're going to put down a stamp on the map once the map decides to do something besides just staring at me, daring me, taunting me. Just give it a moment for it to save. I'm going to refresh the page. It's Illuminati! Oh, man. Okay, I'm just going to refresh the page. You naughty, naughty map, you. How dare you! Send you to the chokey! Okay, we're going to load it up. We're going to put down that stamp. Again, your first stamp is going to be used for scale. I'm not going to put down too many stamps because, again, I don't want to make a full-on battle map. I just want to show you how I do coastlines with the Battlemaps, yeah? Okay. Alrighty then. Alright, we'll open it up here. We're going to go back to composites. Real quick, I'll type in the comp. There we go. Alright, are you going to work this time? Are you going to load? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it? Oh my, you naughty thing, you. Not working. What is happening here? No, there we go. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, never mind. No. Premature celebration here. Premature celebration. Ah! Okay, my goodness. I'm not sure why everything's taking so long to load. Let's see if a tree will work. Oh, hey, what do you know? A tree works. I'm so impressed. Yay. Okay, I'll put down some trees just so we have a little bit more reference on our size. There we go. Put them all nice and close. Close up. There we go. Okay. Now we can go and kind of work on a shore now that I have some scale. And then when I can decide like how big the beach, how far the beach goes away from the shoreline and into the land. Because obviously you don't want a beachhead that's half the island. That's going to look kind of weird. So I'll show you what I mean by that. I go in and I look for kind of sand. You can just type it in, sand. It's everywhere. And there's different options. I'm not going to go with these dune-like sands. Instead, I'm going to go with probably this one right here. Unless you want to add it in. I mean, this is scaled in, so this is kind of a scaled in or zoomed in a little bit, so this might work. But the problem with using this particular one is that the artifacts are changing a particular angle, so you'll have to rotate this each time up against your shoreline because the waves are going to be, sand is going to be emanating away from your shoreline. So you'll have to rotate this texture every single time. So that's why I'm not going to go with it. Instead, I'm going to go with this sand one instead. So this way I don't have to do that. So again, you don't want your, your beach to be, this big where all your sand goes all the way, out to here. I mean, you can if you want, but what I want to do instead is to kind of make it more to where it gradually goes in, and maybe we can throw in some stuff. So let me quickly go, excuse me, I'm going to go along the edge where I want their sand to be. I'm going to put it up against this edge. So like before, you just take that large brush, and with a lower opacity, just go in and do your first pass. I'm going to go in a little bit more here, push it in more. Then I'll go up to a higher setting, bring the size down, just go right along that edge. And you can bring it in a little bit more because it is a beach, so you would expect a little bit more. So we'll go in. This whole spot can be kind of a beach head right here. And then from there, you can go in with your single clicks to kind of, again, create a little bit of transition. Clickety, 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 clack, clickety, 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 clack. Just kind of go in, push these in. And it's sometimes you can even use, there's this green texture here, and you'll notice there are some artifacts. You can bring in that texture to go around, to go in between these kind of textures, so that kind of gives it a little bit more feel to it. Maybe I can put a little bit right here. You would expect a little bit of sand to be randomly around as well, because sand gets blown around, and so you expect a little bit around the edges. And the majority of it's going to be up against the shoreline, because sand is basically all the rock and the land formation over time. Rain and wind eventually powderizes, it turns rock into little granulations, and that's pretty much what creates your beach. It's just over millions upon millions and millions and millions of years, is all that rock and land breaks down, and it creates these beach heads, this sand. Okay, so now from there, you might want to also change your stroke. You don't want to have this black outline stroke. You might want to change it to white if you wanted to, because that's going to be where the shoreline, it kind of meets. So you can change the stroke to white, and again, change the opacity with the opacity slider bar. Of course, you might even want to change the stroke. Well, I think that actually looks okay. And I see that there is also some waves in here. I'm not going to use ripple effects. I very rarely use ripple effects world maps, but I don't really use them on battle maps too often. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. With an ocean, I wouldn't, but if you had like a lake or you could probably use the ripple effects. I don't generally use them for that. So then from there, you'll want to also maybe change your outer shadow color. We have it set to white already, I believe, but we can change it to maybe a similar green color as this right here, because you already have like this light blue color. So let's apply some light blue, and I'm going to bring it out quite a bit. So we'll push it all the way out. And of course, you're going to want to drop the opacity just a little bit on that. Maybe not a little bit, maybe a bit. Let's just stop here. Bring it out. Oh, let's go a little bit more. We'll take a step out real quick. There we go. Let's take a look. Oh, it's getting better. Looks a little bit better. You can change that inner shadow too if you want it to be just a straight yellowish color, because most of this might be a beach, or a lot of it, so you can. Let's go to inner shadow and just play with it. Let's go with kind of a light orange color for now. And I'm going to actually go with yellow instead for now, and then we can bring it closer to the orange range in just a moment. Okay, let's bring it a little bit more yellowish. I'm going to bring out the blur. Oopsie. Oh, hard to see that color. Let's go up a little bit more. Actually, I think a little bit more yellow might be best. Let's go with that. Okay, and I'll bring the blur up, and we'll change the opacity as well. So we'll bring this up, make sure I get the right colors that I want, the right distance. Okay, that's out, and then I'm going to go ahead and drop down the opacity quite a bit. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Let me zoom out real quick. Much better. Now I might want to go across wherever you see there's a little bit of yellow along that edge. You might want to take this same texture and go over just a little bit, because that would create more transition between that yellow outline or that yellow inner shadow that you're using. So you have a little bit of transition here. Oh, I like the color teal. Oh, sorry about that, Your Majesty. I didn't even see you were saying much. I was so busy doing what I was doing. Apologies. Okay, yeah. So I mean that helps right away, immediately, is changing the brush effect, changing the mask effects to suit to your needs. So you're going to want to change them quite a bit on your coastlines with what you're looking for. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of go about it. It's also nice to add in a couple islands, of course, as always, as you would expect. You can go in with that add mode, and you can maybe put an island right here, and it will keep all the same mask effects that you have. So very, very helpful. So we'll go in like this, and you'll notice the mask effects remain the same, which is kind of nice. And you go in, of course, and since it's a small little island out there, you might want to consider just making the whole thing sand. It's just a small little island. It's not massive island. So yeah, I don't really care much for this strange phallic looking shape thing, but you get the general idea about the coastline shapes. You can make more passes to fit to what you want. You can change the mask effects to whatever it is you're looking for. Of course, I always change the mask effects. They change depending on the map that you're creating. So, and it's always nice to also put some things overlapping your coastlines as well for depth. So if this was a world map with a regional style or world map style, when you're placing your stamps, you always want to place stamps that are going to be overlapping. So if you have some trees, let's go with a different one. Sorry, that's not going to work. A tree right here. You want the tree to overlap to go over the ocean like this to create depth, right? See how this tree is going over this shoreline right here? It's creating depth, right? Trees clearly overlap, and the foliage hangs over the water. Same thing with the regional or world or parchment styles. You might want to place a tree or a mountain that's going to overlap your coastline to give it more depth. If everything's in the center, if nothing is overlapping, it kind of looks odd. You'll see a huge difference when you take a stamp and start putting it in spots where there's a little bit of overlap, and that kind of gives it a little bit more character, brings it a little more to life, a little more depth. Okay, so factor that in. Related to coastlines, make sure that you overlap stamps a little bit over your coastlines. It doesn't matter what style it is. Overlap with stamps, always very helpful. All right, so I'm just going to do one last thing with coastlines, and that is I want to show how to do sand going underneath the water, and then that way you can kind of show some depth along the shoreline. Now we took that same sand texture that we were used right here, and you can go in and drop the opacity. Let's go with 39 for now, and then set to BG, and then go in real close, and same thing, go along that edge like this, and you can kind of create that little bit of sand that you see under the water. So I'll do it again, go across right here. This way you can really get a look for some of the depth. Bring that sand in. And the more that you do, the more it's going to have the sand look like it's there. So just kind of factor that in if you want to have sand. And of course, you might want to have overlapping. So you can put in your, if you want to show that this is indeed the sand underneath and you want it to represent more land or represent water, then I would absolutely recommend adding in the ripple effects, because those ripple effects will go over the painted sand underneath. So if I go in with ripple effects, and I'm going to get rid of the count, 5 is quite a bit. Let's just go with something a bit smaller. 1 second. And we're almost going to be done. I'm going to bring the count down. Too many. I like to use 2 or 3. And I'm going to change the color to white so that it kind of shows up a little bit more. Give it a second. We're going to have to change the opacity. Always bring my opacity down quite a bit. So now this way you can kind of see that the waves are going over the sand underneath. Okay, so that gives it a little bit of wave, and that's kind of nice. So it kind of looks like, hey, yeah, this is where the ripples are going back and forth. So yeah, always helpful. So now you have, again, some sand underneath, sand along your coastline. You have the ripple effects, and you've got that inner shadow, which is that yellowish color. Again, put a little bit of sand along it to kind of create more transition. And for your outer shadow, you have white to kind of represent shallower water, and you've got the ripples. And again, paint some sand underneath if you want to make it look like the water is shallower. That's what I would recommend. And of course, if you want to create a darker version, you want to have the water be darker, or be not quite as shallow, it's a little bit darker, then of course just go in with that same texture, drop the brightness down. Of course, always drop your brightness down of that same texture and just apply it, and then you'll get your deep end. Okay, again, just throw in a darker texture. And what's really nice is that, again, if you don't touch those edges, you'll notice that there's a nice light ocean color around the edge, further accentuating the shallower and deeper parts of your water. So you'll see right away that there's some darker colors here. Oopsie, I noticed that I have to subtract some stuff there. My bad. Goodbye. There you go. So now you have some dark parts right there. And again, go ahead, and if you want, you can go into these smaller areas. Say this area right here is a little bit deeper, and maybe some of this area right here is a little bit deeper. And you'll notice this create a nice transition. The very lightest part is the shore where the water meets the land. Then you have some lighter blue, and then the further out you go, the darker it gets. And of course, again, that creates that contrast. Again, light and dark is the contrast, making the landmass pop out. That's really as simple as that. I don't really have much else to show. If you guys, unless you have any questions, I can show you how to make a rock bar or things like that. Just know that you might have to change the mask effect settings when you're making a rock bar. So yeah, if there's any other questions, please let me know. We've gone for an hour and 11 minutes. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them now. We can go over it. I hope this will be helpful. World maps are so cool. Yeah, I love world maps. World maps are amazing. Again, if you haven't seen the world map guide that our very own Philip has created, go check that out. I did provide the link in there earlier. Let me provide it again. It's a time lapse of a world map, and it basically you'll learn how to go through all the different stages of making a world map. And I feel like that is probably one of our best videos, so go check that out if you want to see like a full-on beginning to end time lapse. There's also text that will explain what's happening, so it's a bit easier to follow instead of having to guess everything. So it's a great one, and in the future we might continue to we might have future videos with the same format, text with music and time lapse, because if that's the kind of video content that you want to see, then that's what we'll provide. Okay, so now if anyone was late to the show, don't worry, you could go and watch the VOD on Twitch. I also upload these to YouTube at the end of every single stream, so probably in like an hour or so, or maybe a little bit longer, the map will be it'll be all on YouTube, and you can go ahead and watch from there. So please, if you have questions, please ask now, because that way there might be some other people who are going to watch the video in the future who might have the same question, and that question will get answered. If there are no questions, then I'll just take my lunch. It's been a great stream. I've really enjoyed kind of going over the various techniques to make land masses, and then transitioning on how to make realistic or nice coastlines that generally work well. And remember, explore, try different things, play with different mask effects, play with colors, try things out, play around, explore. If you see a certain map that you like and it's clonable, clone it and edit it, and then look at the mask effect settings, so that way you have a general idea of what looks good, or you know what you want. So it doesn't hurt to go onto the explore page and just use what someone else made, not copy the map, but I mean use the same mask settings. So I do that sometimes. I'll go through the explore page and I'll see something and it's like, ooh, wow, that is an amazing map. I really like those mask effects. I'm going to clone it. I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at these settings and I'm going to duplicate them a little bit and then maybe throw in some of my own pizzazz. Poof, with magic and sparkles. Oh, first time chat. Mitobi Kid. Sorry, I didn't pronounce that properly. Mitobi Kid. Sorry about that. Sorry, been trying to sign up, watching the whole time. Took a bit to set up Twitch. Oh, I'm sorry it took you a little while to set up Twitch, but I'm super glad that you're here, by the way. Yay, the more, the merrier. And if you missed anything, don't worry. Just go back and watch the VOD. And, of course, we upload these to YouTube. We try to add as many videos, as much content as possible to help you out. So, welcome. Yeah, the more, the merrier. Hey, if you got any questions, go ahead and ask them. Yeah, any questions, feel free to ask. Coastlines are not as complex as you think. Honestly, it's just a matter of just figuring out and exploring and testing things out. And again, just go through the explore page for stuff. So for a zoomed in coastline like this, do you smooth it out? Usually more. Yeah, whenever I make a landmass in any style, it doesn't matter what it is, I like to first start with a larger shape and then carve away at it with the subtract mode. The mask tool with smaller brushes, and they're incrementally going down in size as you go because you're carving away. Just think of a sculptor, right? Just think of a sculptor. When you're putting in your landmass, you have a large block of stone and you're slowly chipping away at that stone to create the shape that you want. And that is what you're going to be doing here. Hey, first time chat, Buzzoya to you. Hey, been watching your YouTube uploads a lot the last few weeks. Been super helpful. Hope to join the live streams more. Yes, we would love to have you. Hey, and also Buzz, if hope you don't mind if I call you Buzz. If you haven't yet, go join our Discord server because oh my God, everyone there is super nice. Absolutely join our Discord server. Cheryl can go ahead and drop a link to the Discord server in here. And hey, don't be afraid to ask for future suggestions. I do think that we're going to be adding a stream suggestion channel on our Discord in which people can leave suggestions for streams, give it a thumbs up, and if it gets more votes, then likely we can turn that into a stream because we want to hear the kind of content that you want. What do you want? Not just what I want. Well, no, it is really what I want, but I'm just kidding. Just tell us what you want, and we will probably do that, okay? Oh, another first-time chatter. Hey, great tutorial. The only question I have is there a possibility to rescale a map in the coastlines? For example, I want to make the map bigger. Absolutely, great question. So there are two ways to scale, rescale, or at least two locations to find it. In your grid tool, you'll see there's a resize map, new map from region. Or you can go up into the hamburger menu in the top left corner and you'll see that same option, resize map from region. Okay, now once that's up, you can drag, click, hold, or click, hold, drag. Now, if you want your map to be bigger, extend the boundary box outside of the canvas. That's if you want to increase the size of your canvas space. Now, if you want to make a regional map from a world map, just go ahead and pick the section where you want it to be and then click confirm. Now you'll notice in the right panel, there's also new scene from region, and you're gonna see the positioning points for the top and the left. That's just for the positioning point. So that's just where it's gonna be on the map, the position. The next two is the width and the height, and those can change if you're looking for exact dimensions. Just punch in what you're looking for right here, and then press confirm, okay? It's as simple as that. If you wanna make big maps, again, drag the bounding box outside of the map. You wanna make a smaller section, just go like that, okay? Not complex. Great questions, by the way. Love these. Oh, I'm glad you don't mind, Buzz. Feel free to ask more questions. Also, Cheryl is modding, so ask them any questions if you have any. Any other questions? I hope that was helpful. Resize feature is an absolute must. I use it all the time. I do want to mention one caveat, though, that what the resize feature does actually is doesn't necessarily resize to make it actually bigger or smaller. What it really does is changes the aspect ratio and rescales the snaps to be smaller. That does create larger room for you to work with, but I just want to give you that caveat that that's what it does. I don't want to misguide anyone or mislead anyone. What it does, it will rescale the stamps. It's giving you more room. So that's pretty much what the resize feature does. It doesn't ruin anything, but if you're looking for exact dimensions, again, you can just click that in that right panel right here. Oh, yes, absolutely. Great tip from Cheryl. When you're resizing your map, delete or turn off your filters if you have them on. Not a bad idea. Good suggestion. I recommend that. Again, you can find the resize in the hamburger menu or in the grid option. So totally easy to find, easy to use. And what will happen, by the way, once you press confirm, it's going to save this map that you already have, and it's going to create a copy of this map. So you don't even lose the data of the first map, which is super nice. You might want to keep it. So you'll have the original map plus a clone that's been resized. So very, very helpful. Because sometimes you might be like, ah, shoot, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, or that's not what I was aiming for. I want to do it again. You can totally just go back to the original and resize it. So very, very helpful. Any other questions? Please give a shout. If you have the questions, I will answer them. That's my job. If there aren't any questions, then I will take my lunch and I will begin to upload this video to YouTube. Super exciting. And I think this is actually the last stream of the month, and I'm currently working on a new calendar for next month. Lots of goodies. I do recommend for those of you who will be watching this on YouTube to leave suggestions in the description, or not description, but any suggestions for future streams in the comment section, and we'll try to put together a channel for suggestions for future streams, because hey, can't come up with it all on my own. I love to hear your ideas on what kind of content you want to see in the future. And I think that's it. Well, hey, thanks everybody. That was great. I look forward to the next stream next month, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your month and enjoy your Wednesday. It's hump day. You're almost there, halfway, almost to the weekend. Weekend warrior. Woo! All right. Hey, thank you, everybody. It's been great. I hope the stream helped. And of course, I will see you all in the next one. Again, if you haven't, go join Discord, okay? And thank you, Cheryl, for modding. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your month and your week. And I will see you soon. All right? Merry map making. And please stay safe and healthy, everybody. Please, please stay safe and healthy.